What up, everyone? Back with another video. Gonna do some nerdy news, talk about some things in the news. Quick little break before we got some good movies coming up and some other cool things happening this summer. So, let's get right into it. As always, I split this into two categories. We do the media and then we do collectibles. Really not a lot on the collectibles. There's only like two things, which I'll talk about at the end. But let's talk about the media first. First off, Loki is 4 episodes in as of tonight. I meant to talk about this in the last video, by the way, but I totally forgot. So, let's talk about it. And my initial opinion of it was, before it started, was just like, meh. And now my opinion of it is officially, meh. Because it's just, it's not bad. It's just the same as all these shows. And I'm not even talking about the MCU shows, just comic book TV shows in general. And I know one person in the comments is going to say, well, what about this show? Yeah, they're all the same because it's just, I said it once and I'll say it a million times again. They just draw things out. It's like they take a movie and then just stretch it out as far as they can and really just milk something to death. And that's what all of these shows are. I thought it would be different with Marvel because they have so much potential, but it isn't. It just takes one like 5-minute scene from a movie and then stretches it into like a 6-hour thing. And it's like, it's just too much. And there's so much that just doesn't go anywhere. And I always hold out so much hope because it has such potential. And it always hints at stories that it's going to go on. And it always says these things are going to happen. There's all these Easter eggs. And I get so excited. And then it ends up being literally nothing. And I don't think this show's any different. And like I said, it's a fine show. But, you know, it's a show. There's so many times in it where, especially the CGI. Anytime there's CGI, it's, again, not horrible, but it's just not great either. You can always tell the difference between movie CGI and TV show CGI. There's just a very clear difference. TV show CGI is just much more simplistic, especially with like motion and things like that. It's always minimal, and everything just looks a little cheaper. And it sucks. So every time I see it, I'm like, man, it wouldn't look like this if they were in the movie. And there's also this really daunting thing that's hard not to notice. You got to realize in reality that this is taking place, Loki, immediately after Avengers #1, which was recorded at least 10 years ago. At least. It could have been longer depending on when they actually recorded Avengers, because it probably took a long time for them to do post-production on it. So at least 10 years, and it's taking place 10 years later, and it's hard not to notice Tom Hiddleston is 10 years older. Like, he's still a good-looking guy, he still looks young, but he doesn't look exactly like he did 10 years ago. There's no way around it. As much makeup as they want to use, like, I'm sorry, it's just hard for me not to see, especially when they do back-to-back stuff. Like, they show scenes of him from then, and it's supposed to be like 10 seconds later, and he has crow's feet and wrinkles, and it's like, it's really hard not to see that stuff. And the funny thing is, if it were a movie, that wouldn't be there, because they would spend the money and do that de-aging process like they're going to do in future movies. It's little stuff like that where it's like, you know, it's not the worst thing in the world, but it's hard not to notice. It's hard not to see, and it's hard not to look directly at. So, and again, there's all kinds of speculation and rumor about what's going on, and there's so much about this show that goes nowhere. The same with the past shows. When you're watching a movie, the Marvel MCU movies, there's very rarely ever a scene that just goes nowhere. It might seem like it in that movie, but it does down the line. Everything has a purpose, and that's what makes a good movie. Everything should be useful. Everything you show in a movie should be progressing the story in some way. Anyone that knows anything about cinema or theater or anything like that knows those are basic rules that you have to do. But in this show, they just don't do that. There's so many things in there where they have full-on conversations that just lead nowhere. Like this one, the first episode was very boring. Second episode, also pretty boring. But at the end of it, it finally seemed like something was going to happen because he went through that little teleportation with female Loki. And then episode 3 comes around, and it was a complete waste of time. They kept having these conversations that just kind of went nowhere. He kept trying to figure each other out, and they finally would have a conversation. You're like, oh, finally, some character development. And at the end of the conversation, they'd be like, just kidding. And it's like, what was the point of that? Why are you having these scenes in the show if they're not going anywhere? Like, what is the point? And now the end of episode 4, finally seems like something's going to happen, and it might, but I'm not getting my hopes up because it just might not. Because I think they only have, 2 episodes left? Are they doing 10? I can't remember. There's not enough time for them to lead anywhere. So all these shows keep getting hopes up, and then at the end of the show, you're left with more questions than you had before the show started. So I guess maybe it'll all be worth it because it'll hype up the movie so much more, but I don't know. It just makes me lose hope for all these shows because these were big name characters, and the future shows are going to be about little name characters that I don't even care about. So it's if these shows aren't good, like what leads me to believe those ones are going to be good? And again, there's all these teasers of things that are going to happen, and constantly the actors are saying like, "Oh yeah, there's this big thing coming up," and then it doesn't happen, and then after the show, we hear from the producers like, "Oh yeah, we cut all that out." It's like there was finally something that could make that show good, and you decided to cut it out last minute. So I don't know. It's just very frustrating at this point. And I don't mean to complain too much. At the end of the day, like I always say, I'd still rather have them than not. I'm not saying they shouldn't have created them. It's better than nothing. But that's the most positive thing I could say. It's better than nothing. I'll still watch it, but that's why my opinion is meh, because it's just kind of nothing. It's just kind of there. If I'm bored and there's nothing else to do, there's nothing on TV, yeah, I'll watch it. But I'm not going to go out of my way for it. So that's how I feel about Loki. That's how I felt about Falcon Winter Soldier. That's how I felt about WandaVision. And that's probably how I'll feel about the next show, too. So, whatever. Let me know your thoughts and opinions on that, and we'll talk about that as well. Black Widow's coming up next week, and, I kind of feel the same thing. Very meh about it. I feel like, honestly, before I even see the movie, I feel like it's going to be one of the most lackluster Marvel movies of all time. I could be wrong, and I hope that I am. I hope I'm wrong about it, because there's all these fan theories about what happens to Black Widow. I don't think any of them are true, but like I said in the last video, it's such an odd time for Black Widow to show up. Like, why didn't they put that before she died? Like, why are they doing it now? Which leads me to believe that maybe it's going to go somewhere. Maybe there's some kind of twist ending that she does survive or something like that. And there's all these fan theories about when Steve Rogers took the Soul Stone back, Black Widow came back when he returned the Soul Stone, and they lived out their life together. I don't know. There's all these weird theories. So I like to hold hope that there's something cool, but if I'm being honest, probably not, because that's almost never the case. So I feel like it's going to be very lackluster, because it's been almost 2 years, I think maybe it has been 2 years, since we've had a Marvel movie in theaters, and I don't think this is the one that needs to break the barrier. This wasn't supposed to be the slump buster. It was supposed to happen a long time ago, so I feel like it's going to be a very nothing movie, but I'm glad Taskmaster's coming, so we'll hear all about that next week when I do a review of that. But yeah, so we'll see what happens with that, and, we'll see. All right, what else is in the news? So something popped up. There was an interview with Tyrese from the new movie Morbius, and he actually said that the Spider-Man movie is part of the MCU. And I'm sure you've heard about that. It's been all over the news. So that seemed like it was a big drop, like it was supposed to lead to something bigger. But then people also realized there's a very real possibility that Tyrese might just be an idiot. It's a very real possibility that he just doesn't know what he's talking about. Because as we all know, Spider-Man is part of Sony, and the MCU is over here. And they somewhat cross paths, but they're technically not in the same place. We all know that. People watching this channel know that, but the average person probably doesn't. And honestly, Tyrese does not seem like the type of person that would know the difference. So he may just be talking out of his ass, and it means absolutely nothing. But it's still fun to hear those articles, because it's just fun to hold out just that little bit of hope that maybe that leads to something really cool, because that would be awesome. If Spider-Man was actually in the MCU and all these movies they're doing end up crossing over, that would make these movies so much more exciting, because it leads to something, just like the shows. It's so much more like when Avengers was coming out. It made those movies so much more exciting because you knew it was leading to something else. Not that they would have been bad otherwise, but they just wouldn't have been as exciting. That's the same thing I feel about a lot of these Sony Spider-Man universe ones. I love Spider-Man. I love the Spider-Man universe. It's one of my favorite characters. Love Venom, love all that. That's cool, so I'm still going to love these movies, well, for the most part. But it would just be so much more exciting if it was part of a much bigger picture. I know they're going for the Sinister Six thing, which is kind of like that, but I'm not super excited for that. We'll see what happens. But it would be cool if they all crossed over in the MCU eventually, because Venom is one of my favorite characters. He ends up being in the Guardians of the Galaxy in some comics, so there's a bunch of potential for him to do stuff, but, that's just hopes and dreams. So odds are Tyrese is an idiot, but if not, that would be super cool. All right, let's see what else is in the news. Boop. So they announced there's going to be a new Mortal Kombat animated movie coming soon, which I think is good. This is good. It seems very hopeful. We got that first animated movie, which was Scorpion's Revenge. Is that what it's called? I liked it. Like, me and my friends and my brother watched it. Like, we enjoyed it. You know, it wasn't amazing. You kind of hold it to the standard of what it is. It's an animated movie, one, and it's a straight to whatever you call it, stream, DVD. It didn't have a movie theater release, essentially. I think it was during the quarantine, but I don't think it would have gone to theaters anyway. Not big enough. So you hold it to that standard. Being that standard, it was a good movie. We enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty good. And I'm glad they're making a sequel. And they made the live action and hopefully make a sequel of that. So I'm hoping this is a sign of things to come. Since they made a sequel of the animated movie, hopefully that means it's picking up steam. Hopefully that means it's making money. So then there's hopes for a live action sequel, which would be way better if it had more budget. So that could be a good thing, and I'll definitely check this out. And I really like that Joe McHale was Johnny Cage. So I thought that was really cool. I've always liked him as an actor. I loved him in Community, and there's some other recognizable voices in there too, which made it that much more enjoyable. So overall, I thought it was pretty cool, and I'm excited to see where they go. Maybe it'll start a whole franchise of movies. Who knows? But it's very exciting nonetheless, and that is something to look forward to. Other things. So the Spawn Universe comic just dropped a week ago. So that they just released number 1 because Todd McFarlane announced he's doing the whole Spawn universe. First issue just dropped. I have not read it yet, but I've seen a lot of previews of it. It looks pretty good, and that leaves me hopeful too. And I'm glad that Todd McFarlane is finally following through on some of the things he said. In the last video I talked about the Sam and Twitch TV show. He always does it. He's done this his entire career where he gets your hopes up that something's going to happen, and then he just drops the ball and walks away from it and never talks about it again. So I'm glad that he followed through with at least the comic. We'll see if the whole movie and TV show thing follows through. I have very little hope, but hopefully the comic does well. That way it'll bring income, and then he can follow through on some of the other promises he's made. So there's that. And another thing, we got a trailer from Shang-Chi, and this one was really exciting too. One, a lot of people are saying that Fin Fang Foom was seen in the trailer, which I'm not so sure about. I don't know if the average person knows who that character even is, by the way, but he's the dragon character, and a lot of people were rumoring that he'd be in it, and they think the dragon in the trailer was him, and I'm not sure that it was. If it was, cool. I'm glad they're bringing in more characters, but more exciting is they had Abomination in it, which is so weird. Not even that he'd be in that movie, that itself is kind of weird, but that they show that in the trailer, because that's such a big spoiler. That's a big deal. For so many reasons. Like, we haven't seen Abomination since the Hulk movie, like, before the MCU was even really a thing. Back when it was still Paramount, I think. But it was such a long time ago that we saw that character. Back when it was Edward Norton, like, from that movie. So it's so long ago. When was that even? Like 15 years ago, something like that. So it's such a big spoiler because I don't know. I don't think he plays a very big part in it. And I'm going to be super pissed if that scene with Abomination is like an after credits scene. I'm going to be really pissed off if that's the case, if they teased it in the trailer and it's some little minute thing. So I don't think he plays a big part, so that's why I feel like it was weird for them to tease something like that, because that's such a big giveaway. I would have loved it so much more. If I saw it in the theater, I would have been so excited, but now it's kind of spoiled. But that just opens the doors for things, because it has been rumored left and right all over the MCU that they're preparing for Thunderbolts. Which, if that's true, and I think it is, I'm very excited for that. Because Thunderbolt Ross, supposedly, is supposed to be the Red Hulk in the MCU. And supposedly the Thunderbolts, it's not going to be the modern one, the one I like with like Deadpool, Punisher, Elektra. Like, it's not going to be like that. But it would most likely be Thunderbolt Ross, Red Hulk, Baron Zemo, Abomination would probably be there. And then probably Peggy Carter, something like that. A few other people that are rumored. So it seems like they're setting it up because those characters are coming more and more. And it might be like U.S. Agent, like he might be in there too. So if that's the case, I think that'd be really cool to get like a Thunderbolts movie. So I think that's the direction they're going, and that's why they're introducing him in this really random movie, because they needed a way to bring him back in, and I don't think they can make Hulk movies still legally, so I'm not sure that's ever going to happen. But, you know, and maybe we'll see him in the She-Hulk show. That would be really cool too. But that's just really exciting that we're getting characters that we kind of thought were like gone and dead, and now they're bringing them back into it. And I said before, honestly, Shang-Chi is one of the only movies I'm really excited for. It looks genuinely good. It looks like a legit good movie, And now I'm even more excited to see what kind of crossovers we get in there. So this is the stuff I like. Movies are so much better. TV shows should have these crossovers. They always think they're going to. They leak little things that they may have a crossover, like Doctor Strange is supposed to be in WandaVision, and this and that and this and that, and it just never happens. But now movies are here. They have money. They can pay real actors. So now we have cool crossovers like that. That's what I'll be excited for. So it's exciting to see that trailer, and I'm pretty excited for that movie. We also got a new Eternals trailer, but not really much to say about that. We keep getting drip feeds of Eternals. Now we have a full trailer, and it's there, but there's really not anything in there, which again is a good thing, I think. And I talked about this before. It's so much better when it's new characters, just because you have no frame of reference. When they do like a Batman movie or a Spider-Man movie, there's so much expectation because those are well-loved characters, and there's so much content previously that they have to live up to this standard. So there's so much expectation. But when you have something like Eternals, which people know about, I've heard of them, I know who they are, but I know very little about them. I've never read an Eternals comic. I've just heard them mentioned. So when you have characters like that, you have no standard, so you're never disappointed. Because sometimes you go see a movie, and even though it's a good movie, it's different from what your expectations were, so you still end up disappointed. Just like Guardians of the Galaxy. Barely anyone knew who they were before the movie, and it ended up fantastic. So it's a good place to be in, to have absolutely zero expectations for a movie, but that's why there's not much to say about the trailer. They don't really show anything. There's some very brief little glimmers of some of the characters' powers, and that's kind of it. This movie has the potential to be great. I know it's going to branch off into other things, and I think these characters are going to end up, like Black Knight's supposed to end up in the Avengers down the line, but yeah, they haven't given enough information to really know, and I feel like that's how it's going to be until the movie comes out. I feel like we're just going to not know what's going on until then. I don't think there's going to be any big spoilers, or at least hopefully not. So that's the Eternals. And then, yeah, I think that's pretty much it as far as the media. So let's jump into the collectibles. This will be a real short video. So I was talking about the Spawn comic book, Spawnverse, back to Todd McFarlane. Another thing that came out the same day they released the comic was they released a new line of action figures. So again, finally, McFarlane's following through. He did the first Reborn Spawn figures that I have over here. That was 2 years ago. I got them at Toys R Us back when it was still in business, before they were going out of business. That was supposed to be the line that relaunched the Spawn figures, and he just kept putting it off and putting it off. Finally, we're now finally getting it. I don't even know if it's considered in the same figure line because it was so long ago at that point. But again, finally, Todd McFarlane's sticking to his word. Thank you. And overall, I gotta say, I'm pretty disappointed by these figures. Some of them have been redesigned, and that happens over time. They always get redesigns, but Violator specifically looks completely different, and I'm not really a fan of the new design. Over the years, Spawn has always changed forms, a little bits and pieces, but it's never been a total 180. This is a total 180. He's the exact opposite it was before. He was known for being really long and stringy, and that's what made him cool looking. And now he's just really big and beefy, and he just looks awkward. And I don't know. I really don't like the new design of him. And I'm sure there's more of an explanation for it in some of the new comics, but really don't like the new design on that. And past that, the figures in general are just very lackluster. It's not that they're bad. I'm not hating on them in any way, but they're just not the standard they should be. They're not the standard that I'm used to from Todd McFarlane. That's what his figures were so awesome. His toys from 20, 30 years ago were immaculate. I have them sitting on the shelves to this day because they're such good quality. And these 30 years later should be better in quality. The technology has advanced so much since then, and they've raised the prices. They're triple the price they were, so the quality should be much better, but they're less so. They're just not as good in quality. I'm pretty disappointed. The Spawn figure that we got from the Kickstarter, that was Todd McFarlane quality. These figures right here, that's Todd McFarlane quality. These ones are just kind of average action figure quality. The sculpt on them is pretty nice. I will say that. The way they're sculpted, they have a lot of detail, but they're just constantly that solid colored plastic, which just gives it no depth. in some of his recent figure lines are the exact same way. But the old school ones, they had a lot of paint to them, and that's what gave them depth. And it just had some random, like, almost like a shoe polish texture to it to add some black into all the crevices. That way you could see the detail. When it's just like one solid color of vinyl or plastic or whatever you want to call it, it doesn't matter how much detail you have in there. It's so hard to see when it's just one color. You need some paint variety in there to give it some depth of field. Otherwise, you don't really see all that detail, and that's really the problem here. And I don't know why. I don't know if they're just going cheaper or if they legit think this looks better, but there's a lack of paint on there, and it just doesn't give it any depth. So from a distance, it just looks like a very plain, boring figure. And honestly, when I collect things, that's pretty much the distance I'm looking at. Not rarely ever like getting right up to my collection and looking. I want things to look good from all distances, no matter where you're looking at it. And these figures just don't seem like they are. There's too much of it that is just very plain and mundane in that way. So I hope that's just them cheaping out, because these figures are going to sell out very quickly and it'll bring more money in, so hopefully that'll bring up the quality. And I'm trying to look at even the more recent ones. Yeah, the Spawn ones were pretty good. Those had good paint. But yeah, these ones just very, very plain. But I'd like to hear your opinion on that too, if you think the same thing or you're over the moon on that. And I was saying the same thing even about the Kickstarter Spawn. It could have used more paint to give it more depth, but I don't know if that's just his style now or what, but I was really excited that when I heard this action line announced, and now I'm looking at it, and I'm not sure if I'm going to get any of them, which is kind of an odd thing to say. Not to mention that I wouldn't say they're expensive, but far more expensive than they should be. The original line of action figures were pretty much regular action figure price, maybe a little more. They were like around that $10 to $12 range, not bad at all. And I know prices have changed over the time, but this is still very expensive for what it is. So I don't know. I was kind of bummed out by that, but we'll see. I'll probably get some just for the sake of doing a review on them, and we'll talk more about it there, but that's my overall opinion of that figure. And the only other thing that's come up, there hasn't been much in collectibles. A lot of announcements, but nothing that has really like caught my fancy, honestly. But this one did. Kotobukiya, I never know if I'm pronouncing that right, so don't hate on me, but Kotobukiya, whatever you want to say, announced some new figures from Yu-Gi-Oh! And I know it's very old news, but I was always a fan of that original show, and I just happened to be rewatching it right now. When I saw this announcement, I was watching it. And the original, by the way, the first few seasons with Yugi and Joey and Kaiba, like that series. That's what I'm rewatching. And Kotobukiya announced they've been slowly releasing Yu-Gi-Oh! Figures, and I'm glad they are. And I want to collect some. I just haven't got around to it. Haven't had money lately. But they have announced a lot over the years, and they're at a pretty reasonable price. And they just announced the 3 Egyptian gods. And these ones I really want, because those were some of the coolest characters. I really like them. They recently came out with the Funko Pop figures of Obelisk and Slifer. They still haven't released Ra, but hopefully he's coming. And so they announced these figures. These look really cool, but they're very overpriced. And I know Kotobukiya is a very nice company. They do very nice figures, and they're a little pricey, but they're usually around under $100. And I know these are a little bit bigger, but not really. They look huge, but these figures are only about a foot tall. I looked at the specs in there. Each one, give or take an inch, is only about a foot tall, which I know is big, but it's not that big. And the other ones are like $90, and some of them are cheaper than that, which is reasonable. And these ones are $220, and I'm not really sure why. I could understand if these were like statues made of resin or porcelain, because they look like they are, but they're not. They're PVC. They're that plastic material, so I'm not sure why they're so expensive. That seems very overpriced. So for the whole set, it's $660, and it's a fairly small set. It's just slightly bigger than an action figure, so very overpriced on that, which I'm kind of bummed about because I really want them. But they've done other Yu-Gi-Oh! Figures, and those are pretty reasonably priced, so maybe I'll pick some of those up. I still do want these. I just think they're very highly priced, so I'm not really sure why. But I love that original series. I love the Egyptian gods. I just love Egyptian culture in general, and I really love those first seasons because it overlapped with Egyptian culture. I thought that was so cool, and they kind of just got rid of that whole thing and just abandoned it and continuously make more Yu-Gi-Oh! Shows that are just kind of nothing, but such a bummer. But those look really cool. Then, that's pretty much it. So, not too much has happened. Mostly media announcements, not much in the collectibles. So, yeah. So we'll see you next week for Black Widow, I think is next, and then Space Jam's after that. So we have some exciting movies coming up, and we'll talk about more TV shows, more nerdy news, and we got some more subscription boxes coming up. So lots of exciting things. As always, let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Doesn't matter. You don't have to agree with me. I just want to know what you think, to know what's going on. I want to get the general opinion. And then let me know things you're excited for, things you want to see on the video. Please let me know in the comments and we'll talk about it there. As always, feel free to enter the giveaway at any time. Search the video giveaway rules and follow the instructions there. There will be a giveaway winner on each video. So again, thank you all for watching and supporting. See you on the next video. Love you all. Peace.